Hello, good morning, good afternoon, welcome. I'm very pleased to be joined by James Watson, who's the Secretary General for Eurogas. James has a long history in energy and specifically around the corridors of power in terms of Brussels and understanding how the world works. So welcome, James.
Thanks, Nadeem. It's a great pleasure to be here. And yeah, really looking forward to discuss the future of hydrogen with you.
Yeah. So Eurogas obviously heavily involved. We've seen the last few years of hard work coming to fruition in terms of some sort of core policy pieces, some core regulation. I would say, a really solid body of work that has been laid down that is going to sort of underpin, hopefully, this sort of energy transition and certainly the role that green molecules can play in it. Well, what is your take, I guess, as we talk now in January 2024? Where are we? How happy are you? How robust do you think that the policy frameworks are across the whole value chain from, I guess, production midstream, and to also consumption and demand shoring?
Well, it's a good time to be talking about that sort of thing, Nadeem, because we are now in January 2024, just about looking at probably one of the most unique and first ever hydrogen regulations that has ever been produced by any country or group of countries anywhere in the world. So the hydrogen and gas package has just been agreed, and that is going to set a regulatory framework that will help the hydrogen market grow in Europe. And indeed, I think, looking into things like the Renewable Energy Directive as well, we start to find targets for things like renewable hydrogen. So, in essence, a lot of people talk about, when is the dawn of the hydrogen industry going to be? I would say that right now we're actually past the dawn. Now the sun is up. Now is the time to deliver. The regulatory framework is in place. There's a lot of information about how hydrogen systems, but I mean, the pipes can be developed. There's also rules for how the market should play. And most importantly, we have those targets for industrial use of hydrogen and some hydrogen use in transport. And so that means we've actually got demand drivers, if you will. And a lot of people always said, well, it's great, we produce supply, who's going to take it off? Well, now actually the legislation says it's going to be used in industry and it's going to be used in transport. At least it's the first step. And so I think, Nadeem, we could say that, yeah, the new framework has started to lay down the rules of a new hydrogen system. So the dawn is past. We're now starting the day.
Yeah. And in terms of I mean, there are key areas that are strong in the sense of, I guess, the midstream, and we're going to see, investments in a hydrogen backbone, which is going to be, I guess, a core part, a core infrastructure, which is going to enable, investments to happen on certainly the production side. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I think there's new rules that have described who can actually own and operate those new pipes. Some that will have to be built, some that will be repurposed. So that's been clarified. So now there is the possibility for companies or investors who want to get engaged in developing the hydrogen grid system that they can do it now with the certainty of the law behind them. So that midstream area has now been taken care of. I mean, we always had the production side moving forward with lots of demonstration projects all over Europe, electrolyzers being deployed alongside renewable electricity. And I think that we also were looking at how you have current off-takers who are using hydrogen and identifying how we could actually change the current sort of grey hydrogen that they use to being more green and looking at renewable. And so there was always the demand and there's always been the supply. The middle bit, which may have been missing to some extent, is now going to be fully possible to develop and grow. And so I think that speed can pick up. But just before we just talk about green, I would just say one other area where we see investment possibilities growing, also due to legislation that's in progress in Europe, which is the Net Zero Industry Act, is the possibility for blue hydrogen to develop again,
Yeah.
because there's a target for 50 million tons of CO2 storage by 2030, which the Commission, European Commission that is, has said very clearly is also for hydrogen production. So that would refer to carbon capture and storage on natural gas to develop blue. So there will be the possibility for quite a lot of infrastructure development around the hydrogen business now, whether you look at blue or renewable. And so I think, yeah, I would say this, we are serious about how we're going to do hydrogen in Europe. And I think that we are now at the point where the regulation is starting to say this is how it will be done. So investors, you can have some certainty and get on with it.
Yeah, yeah. The it's a good point around the 50 million tons target because that is effectively, I guess, a second front in terms of the decarbonisation of the gas industry. Whereas you're seeing the rise of a new renewable based gas industry. So you're seeing two things happening parallel, both both advantageously, I would presume. One point around the midstream, because I think it is worth unpicking, is the value that that midstream provides. I mean, the gas grid itself, or the hydrogen gas grid itself, can actually be valuable in terms of storage in itself. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, one of the big reasons why a lot of people have said that we should move into things like green hydrogen or renewable hydrogen is because of, the need to be able to store electrons. And so you developed green hydrogen also as a store from the very high production of electricity, say in summer through solar into the winter. You couldn't really store it through electric batteries, so you'd store it as hydrogen. Well, the question was, where are you going to store the hydrogen?
Mm.
Of course, there are a lot of store points around Europe, and people have talked about using steel tanks, which I think is relatively, you can do it large, but individual tanks are quite small. So we have to look in things like salt caverns. And as you also alluded, as we do with natural gas, you line pack the grid. You can also line pack the grid for hydrogen. So the grid itself can also offer storage capabilities. But this will probably be the next part of the overall value chain, and from a regulatory point of the value chain, where we will continue to look and develop the right models to make sure that the storage of hydrogen is also commercially successful. And I think in Eurogas, that's what we say, we need to make sure that whilst we need to regulate, we also need to allow the market to also have a role to play. And we shouldn't have too many tariffs interfering with the development of a hydrogen storage system because we're going to need it. And yeah, we need to make sure that we also know what salt caverns we have available for natural gas as we're in the transition, and what ones can we use for hydrogen. And I don't know, there's opportunities, there's options. You can even store it under the North Sea, Nadeem. This is also an opportunity. But again, we'd have to look at the infrastructure of getting, the hydrogen back out there, if you will, or producing it on site from offshore wind and storing it where it's produced. So there are many options, and storage is definitely going to be an important part of the hydrogen story. Because in a way, sort of ironically, or whichever way you look at it, hydrogen has also come to light because it is an opportunity to store electrons in itself. So there are two elements when we talk about storage, and one is supporting the renewable electricity, and one is in itself supporting the use of hydrogen throughout the economy.
Yeah, understood. You mentioned transport as well, or any sort of comments around that and how you see that market developing?
Yeah, I think at the moment it's one of the only areas that also has a specific target for hydrogen. I mean, it's a relatively small one, but it's still a target. And let's be honest, there's not many vehicles running on hydrogen today. There may be a few buses, few cars, a few trucks here and there, but the future is now set. And when the Commission says that they would like to have a certain volume of hydrogen in transport, you will see basically the OEMs, the makers, the parts manufacturers starting to move more and more to develop hydrogen engines. And the latest legislation around heavy duty vehicles is also going to support the development of, if you like, internal combustion engines that work on hydrogen. So I think that the future is quite set for hydrogen, at least in heavy duty vehicles, say in buses, and this kind of segment. And probably in the future, Nadeem, I think we'll probably also talk about ships and container ships and this sort of thing. But that's still to come. The infrastructure has to be built. We probably have to go through the pathway of from bunker oil through LNG into hydrogen. So that's a bit of a longer process. Whereas I think in trucks, you can imagine that there'll be hydrogen, in 2030s, quite prevalent.
Yeah, and I guess there's also to add is the aviation sector where again you've got that mandate in terms of the e-fuel component coming in 2030.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, on aviation, you can also see probably more like looking at sort of e-fuels on this rather than pure hydrogen being used. So sort of a new synthetic form of fuel will be developed for the aviation market. So on a sustainable basis, of course. So sort of SAFs, sustainable aviation fuels, and hydrogen will have a role to play in that as well. So it is going to grow. And I think all the legislation has really focused on this. So you've had sort of, the Fuel EU looking at the maritime, and I think that this will go hand in hand with the aviation sector and also into trucks. So hydrogen has quite a strong role in the future of transport, and we in Eurogas are very active on that and believe that that is a really good use for hydrogen to help decarbonize, some of the more difficult segments of our transport sector, which simply can't be electrified.
Mhm. Excellent. So yeah, it's going to be a, I guess, a landmark year, 2024. We look forward to working with Eurogas. I know your colleagues are going to be speaking at the World Electrolysis Congress, which is fast approaching us in March in Düsseldorf, and I'm sure you'll be back in the World Hydrogen Week or World Hydrogen Congress as well, speaking again representing your members. So we look forward to working hand in hand with Eurogas. We thank you for your support and all the work you've been doing in helping build this regulatory environment, which hopefully going to allow the market to deploy projects, and we can accelerate the sort of path to decarbonisation.
Yeah, well, I have to say thanks to you as well, Nadim. We really appreciate the good work that you're doing. Just one final thing, I'll say that when we are with you in the World Hydrogen Congress, we will indeed be unveiling some of the findings of our new study, which will look at the development of hydrogen through 2030 and 2040 and the end uses thereof. So I think you and the people that come to the Congress can be, excited to see the view of the overall gaseous fuel industries and how we see these fuels being utilized. And I'll be delighted to speak to you and, as I say, the people attending to tell more about how the future is going to unfold for hydrogen.
Looking forward to it. So yeah, it's in September the 30th, I think, to 4th of October in Copenhagen this year. So it's going to be a
Looking
great
forward to
show.
that. Yeah, it should be
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
excellent. Well, take care, James. Great to chat
Yeah.
to you as
Looking
always.
forward to seeing you in Düsseldorf, Nadim. Thanks.